All right, so today we'll be talking about engaging your community in the network of ecological monitoring and the Colorado Native Plant Society. I'll tell you a little bit about this organization and we will roll towards restoration as we talk. But we are a nonprofit dedicated to preserving and teaching people about the native plants and habitats in Colorado. And we do that in lots of ways. So I already covered this, what our goals are for the day. And throughout the slides, you'll see pictures of people doing different tasks, right? So like, for example, raise your hand if you have a bioblitz in your land management environment. See, wonderful. And you do it for a city nature challenge or otherwise? Yeah. So, and do you use iNaturalist to do that? And do you have to train people on how to use iNaturalist? Yeah, see, okay, we can all help each other. So the Colorado Native Plant Society was founded in 1976, and the inspiration really came from a meeting like this one, right? Where people come together and they recognize what the issues are, and they decided to take up the cause. And for 46 years, the Colorado Native Plant Society was volunteer run, and I am the first executive director, and I was a volunteer before I took this job. So that was kind of fun. What's great when volunteers get jobs. But I work at the university and I used to work at Colorado Mountain College, and you know, it really is all connected. When I was younger, I volunteered to learn stuff, and as I was training to be a restoration ecologist, like I didn't take a lot of botany classes, right? I took native plant master and I volunteered with clinics. And so think about while we're talking how you can educate your community by engaging in these types of activities. So let's just think about CONIPS is statewide. We have over 2,000 members. We currently have 8 chapters, and next year we'll have 11. And so the chapters are all initiated by volunteers. Our core chapters are in northern, like Loveland, Estes Park, Fort Collins, Boulder, Denver, Southeast, San Luis Valley, Arkansas River Valley, and we're in the Sweet Plateau chapter right here. But there's big holes there, right? Nothing from Meeker to Rifle, nothing in the I-70 corridor. So we're always trying to grow our network so we can help land managers. So like next year, we have teams in Gunnison, Telluride, and La Junta who are trying to build chapters. So grassland, I was just in La Junta. Tarantula Folk, anyone here from La Junta? Oh yeah. I really thought about wearing my Tarantula Fest t-shirt, but went with this thing instead. So before I forget, very important, we have 4 funding opportunities. So our society does a lot of fundraising to give money out to the world. So we have the Star and Mar and Steinkamp grants, which provide money for rare plant and native plant research. The Alice Eastwood Scholarship is for a student entering high school or college who would like to pursue natural resource discipline or any mission aligned discipline. And then finally, we have the mission grant, which is probably most appropriate to anyone in this room. We give out money for community projects, community action, all sorts of stuff like that. So across the state, we gather in committees, no matter where we are, to build leadership and programming in these areas. So our field studies committee does a lot of rare plant monitoring and phenology work. So do you guys have any rare plants in your landscapes? Raise your hand. And this committee has resurrected the Adopt a Rare Plant program, which is a really historic program. We partner with Colorado Natural Heritage Program for that. In CNHP, they pick out rare plants and our people go out and look for them. And we look for plants that people haven't seen in at least 20 years on the G1 and S1 list. And like this year, for example, Ecologia saxamontana is on there. Has anyone ever seen that? Yes. Take it. Oh, good. Marketing. So this one, like, we see it because we go hiking. But it's never been observed in 20 years, but at least 20 people observed it. But then like we talk and it's like you gotta obscure that stuff in iNaturalist. So make sure your Sac Montana is obscured. And we monitor the Todd Gulch Fen in Boulder County through that committee as well. Our education committee does a lot of outreach and training workshops, and this is when we'll probably see you guys again. We have, like, for example, Gwen Kittel, the author of the Willow Flora, like, we'll do workshops where we'll have microscopes. And it's like, anyone here do wetland delineation? Yes? Oh, usually more hands go up. You need to know what willows you're looking at. You need to come to one of Gwen's trainings. Oh, thank you. Where did you take it?
Up by, I'm totally forgetting. In the Aspen area.
Oh, cool. Right on. That's awesome. I still don't know how to ID the one. Yeah. I knew which ones were in my restorations. And then horticulture, I talked to you guys about this in 2022 with Alex Crochet, the city horticulturalist from Colorado Springs. But we do all sorts of stuff, right? So have you heard of wild ones? People in the Front Range, right? So we do a lot of wild ones type stuff, but wild ones is just in the Front Range. So we expand that throughout the state. We partner with them a lot. And we have native garden tours. We have a certification program, and seed shares, winter propagation, native plant shares. Just all people want to do right now, you know? And so let us know if you're trying to do that in your environment. But today I really want to talk to you about restoration, and we are in a multi-year agreement with the Region 2 Forest Service to develop and implement the Rocky Mountain Native Plant Materials Program. And we also partner with CNHP to achieve these goals. And I know, because I get around the state, that lots of towns, open spaces, counties, you are starting seed programs too, you know, and so raise your hand if you're touching seeds in your job, right? Well, that is what we do. We try to make many hands make light work. So I already went over the chapter orientation, but just to remind you of where we are, and we go and do our seed collection work beyond these boundaries. But if you live somewhere near here, definitely reach out to us. Our volunteers are always around to help out. So in this part of the talk, I'm going to talk to you a bit about like big picture legislative concepts, which no one seems to know exist. I've given this talk many times actually. And I wanted to point you here, and this is being recorded, and it already has been recorded, so these links you can have in the future. But I'm gonna read from slides for a little while. I apologize, but I want to give you the actual federal language, like the language, not my interpretation of it, of the National Seed Strategy for Rehabilitation and Restoration. And if you visit the BLM webpage, you'll see there's like multi-year reports, there's lots of deep stuff in there. And great example for any program that you might be starting. So the National Seed Strategy is a way to provide a coordinated approach for rehabilitation and restoration treatments in our public lands. And it provides a framework for actively working with the private sector. So like I worked for the Forest Service 20 years ago, and I feel like we did everything, you know, but now they manage contracts and agreements. They like to call them agreements. And so really our federal land managers are working with the people to achieve their goals. And so it's really important that Carlin and I speak to you today here in Grand Junction because we want to work with you. And we have lots of challenges, right? Do you think we have some land management challenges today? We absolutely do. And it doesn't matter if you're on county land or federal land or city land, they're the same challenges. So let's work together. And the strategy of the National Seed Strategy, the vision is to put the right seed in the right place at the right time. And we want to make sure genetically appropriate seed is available. So we do a lot of background science stuff to make sure when we collect seeds and increase them and give them back out for restoration that they're appropriate. We have like seed transfer zones that take into effect climate and elevation factors. So through these next few slides, I just want to really point to the fact that these are the kinds of first pieces of legislation that use the words native plants. Really, we had never seen that in our first generation public lands management. So if you think about like the problem of cheatgrass, smooth brome, etc., kochia, Russian thistle, we brought these, all y'all plains folks, we brought these things here, right? It was part of the homestead movement and colonialism. You had to improve the land to be given your piece of land in the American West. And what did it mean? How did we improve the land? We tried to make it rangeland, you know, and back east a little more farmland. But essentially, weeds, we brought them here. We hate them. Let's be a little more compassionate because we did this. So let's help to fix it. And the other problem I see here is that there was no seed industry for natives when we were in the homesteading movement. So we brought seeds from the old world, which we thought would help us survive as we moved into the new world, as they did. Same thing like, you know, pigweed, lamb's quarters, purslane, horehounds. Like these are plants we brought here to sustain ourselves and provide medicines because we didn't know what we would get. So this idea of native seeds at the helm of public lands management, it's a new idea. And it really has been my career that this has happened. So like in the 1999, we had the Great Basin fires. And have you ever heard of Seeds of Success through BLM? Like this is really what I'm talking to you about today is not a totally new idea. It's been around for 2 decades. But here in Region 2, which is Colorado, Wyoming, Kansas, Nebraska, and South Dakota, we have no native plant materials program until late 2022. So it's all really new for us here. And so this strategy will be renewed in a 5-year cycle. We're in the middle of it right now. We collect grasses primarily. We're starting to collect more forbs. We'll start collecting like riparian shrubs and other things as we go on. We never collect listed species or timber species or invasive species. So there are 4 goals of this national seed strategy. And as I'm talking, just look for the analogies in your own land management life, right? So goal 1, let's find the seeds, okay? And let's figure out where they are and make sure that they're the right ones for the right place. And goal 2 is to conduct research and monitor. So volunteers are great at this and you never have money for it. So monitoring is something that happens or the restoration project starts, right? And so that's why engaging the volunteers right now would be great. But on a larger picture, what does this research look like? We're looking at viability, germination rates, and really we're making a hyper diverse seed supply. So we're collecting seed from all of these similar landscapes and similar life zones. And then we're sending it off to Oregon, to Bend Nursery for increase. So the wild collected seeds get put into farm rows. And as they grow up, the seed is harvested and then it is stored for future restoration use. And so the thing that's interesting to me is when I see the words like develop the resource, I was thinking, what does that mean? Well, when we aggregate the seeds, we're actually hoping that we get as much genetic diversity as possible. So at least one of those individuals will survive into the future. And goal 3 is developing tools that help us talk to each other. I'll mention this a little bit later, but Colorado Natural Heritage Program makes lots of tools, right? And so you guys, have you ever heard of Codex as a system, So like we're developing a similar system that helps us know where these populations are so we can collect them, increase them, and use them in restoration. And then finally, goal 4 is part of the reason why I'm here talking to you today. CONIPS is a great finder, right? We talk to everybody. Our volunteers volunteer for other organizations. And so weaving the fabric to develop the internal and external communication is a really important part of the national seed strategy. So success looks like people collecting native seed, researchers working on identifying and developing appropriate seeds, farmers to grow seed. This is the biggest gap that we have right now. We send our seeds to Oregon. They could go to Nebraska or Idaho, but they can't stay here. There's a Meeker's Native Plant Material Program, Meeker, sorry, not plural, but they don't have the capacity to grow out our seeds right now. And we need storage facilities. And we need, say it with me, restoration ecologists who know how to put the right seed in the right place at the right time. Thank you so much. All right, so reminding you that part, I try to do it as straight as possible. Gave you a little of my lecture notes about the Homestead Act. Sorry about that. Here's a couple other cool ones. Big players in this are like the Institute for Applied Ecology. There's the International Network for Seed-Based Restoration. So these publications are coming out of there. So how are you doing on time? The Rocky Mountain Native Plant Materials Program, we collect seed. And more, what we do is we scout for that seed. And so all seed collection begins with scouting. And if you learn something today, it's that you are a powerful tool. You and your iNaturalist. So I'm a huge fan of iNat, and I wrote my dissertation about how to train citizen scientists to collect reliable data. And a big piece that came out was photos are research grade data. And I'm like a quantitative ecologist. So I spent a lot of time just thinking, what does that mean? But then COVID happened, and like all we had was iNaturalist. We couldn't actually go out together. So what you're seeing in the top right here is you can use iNat as a land manager in the opposite way that is intuitive, right? You can look up a place and you can explore a plant or fauna or whatever insect type and then see what's been observed. And there's frequency problems here, right? Like people never take pictures of the grasses. Darn it. And so then it looks like we have landscapes full of flora or flowers, but no grasses. Of course there are grasses there. So this right here is Poaceae at research grade in Colorado. And so I was just in the Comanche and we were doing seed collection, and Comanche's down here. See, not a whole lot of people are observing compared to our central mountains, but we like look and then we contact people. It gets real personal and we're like, tell us about that Andropogo Girardi. And that's how we find these plants. And this is super important because last year between CONIPS and CNHP, we drove 12,000 miles to find and collect the seeds for restoration. Like that is, the more participation we have in scouting, the better we can reduce our ecological footprint, right? It's very counterproductive to drive that much to find something to help solve the problem. Another tool we use is SciNet. Are you guys familiar with this? So it's SW, Southwest Colorado Wildflowers.org, but it's SW Colorado Wildflowers.org. And this is a great resource where herbaria specimens are digitized. So if you want to know what's going on in your landscape, you can use it in the same way, go through the map, see what is there. and herbaria specimen are live specimen that are pressed and kept in like a library setting. If you don't have an herbarium in your neighborhood or community, like reach out. That's a great way that we can connect. Like Adams State has one, Fort Lewis, like probably Colorado Mesa, but I don't know. Yeah, Western has one. And so what Al Schneider has done here is like help to digitize this resource. And then within our field crews, we use Survey 123, which comes through Esri, which I'm sure a lot of you guys have. And we're able to put our scouting points on the maps of our land management. And then we can put INET and SciNet points onto our field maps and see where these plants are. And this would also be a great way to find out if there are rare plants on your landscape. And through all of this, we train people to look at plants, and volunteers in the restoration committee have built this giant slideshow, which hopefully will become a publication soon enough. But we've got all of our species list that we collect. But this is the thought, this is what we can do for you, right? Everyone needs to know a bit about botany. And so we look at, for example, a big blue stem. We're trying to teach people that, like, if Ackerfield here in the floor of Colorado says the spikelets have awns or they don't, what did you have to take a picture of? The spikelets. But a lot of people just take this fun picture that they would put on a postcard, but it's not like a science picture, right? So we're trying to teach people how to take those pictures in INET that become like scientifically useful. This is a great resource. Jan Wingate just published a new guide that is the vegetative keys of grasses. So you can look at the vernation, which is this cross section, and the ligule and the sheath and all of that for ID if you don't have the spikelets. And so here's, we try to take these pictures and model the way and also show what this or that, right? Like we were just in Comanche and there was hairy grandma, black grandma, blue grandma, side oats grandma. Like they're actually not that hard to tell. It's a lot of grandmas. And so we try to show those differences and also always using INET. So we'll go back here. So finally, a big piece of it too is phenology. If CNHP is going to send their crews, hopefully the plants are ready. And so taking pictures and being our phenology partners, we would love that. Please contact me afterwards if you're interested in helping with this. And that simply means you're out on your landscape telling me, yo, that's still flowering, or it's about to shatter. Get here, and then we can collect the seeds. So all of these things, I hope that you engage us to help you do them and that you use these as, or think about the analogies that you have in your land management spaces. And join the CONIPS Restoration Committee. It's the most like professionally engaged place in CONIPS. All the people who come to these committee meetings are working and they're just like you, trying to solve these problems. Finally, we have interns that work out in the landscape to help enact this programming. And so if you would be interested in like having an intern in your space, let us know because we want to train people and then share that knowledge out, train the trainers. So there's my email and more fun pictures of stuff we do. And Carlin is now going to talk to us about some of these specific projects seeds might be used for.
Thanks, Maggie. That was great. Like I said earlier, my name is Carlin. I am the forest ecologist for the Grand Mesa Uncompahgre Gunnison National Forest here in Western Colorado. And I'm going to give a few examples of some restoration projects we're working on, some challenges we face in the hopes that, we might commiserate a little bit on our challenges, maybe find some solutions together. And also, I think I've got some things that tie it all back to the volunteerism that we're really here to talk about that doesn't actually work. So just to set the stage, we call it the GMUG because our real name is much too long. This is the GMUG. It's 3 million acres. Grand Junction is up there in the upper corner. And we cover pretty much all the higher elevations surrounding here down to the northern San Juans and east to the Gunnison Basin. We range in elevation from 5,800 feet up to above 14,000. So we don't have any plains, but we have all the other ecosystems that Maggie was showing us earlier. So it's super interesting. As an ecologist, I don't get bored, but I do often get a little overwhelmed. But I guess that's okay. And when it comes to restoration work that we do, we also have a pretty wide spectrum. So on the left, something that I would consider more simple or kind of standard for us, that is timber post-harvest photo. It was an aspen harvest. You can see here and there, those are the old skid trails. So where the equipment goes in and operates, it's, not really a road per se. It's affected for maybe 3 to 6 months. We have some soil compaction, but in every timber contract that we issue, those ones are actually contracts. We don't usually do agreements for timber, so it's a little stricter, but I like agreements better. So every contract that we issue, there will be some specs saying, okay, upon closing out the sale, you have to scarify the skid trails. We sometimes require seed, we sometimes don't. That's an area that we're still kind of working out where exactly we need to seed or not. But that's stuff that we do kind of all the time. Then over on the right, a little more complex, that is the Elk Creek wetland at the Standard Mine. So that's off of Kebler Pass Road going from Paonia to Gunnison. Beautiful drive right now. The aspens are popping. That was an EPA Superfund site that was restored back in 2010. So there was a lot of steps to that. There was tailings removal, they capped an old adit, and they restored a wetland, which we did in collaboration with a contractor, Alpine Eco Restoration. So that's about 10 years post-restoration. It's looking pretty good, but that's something that we do occasionally, but not like the timber sales that are like every year we've got something new. So I did want to quickly revisit the national seed strategy that Maggie talked about, just because I think it's really relevant to the challenges that we're facing. So I won't make you all say it again, but the right seed in the right place at the right time. And to make that happen, we have to ensure the availability. So we have a few challenges, I won't lie, but for me right now, I think the availability of the seed we want is really the biggest kind of crux of all of this. And I'm going to give you a couple examples of restoration projects that I'm working on right now and a couple of the challenges that we face. And it's a lot of it's going to tie back to like, we can't buy the seed we need. So this is a dispersed campsite that we closed, and now we're trying to figure out what to do about it. It is at Alta Lakes, which is outside of Telluride, Colorado, another super beautiful high alpine lake. It used to be kind of a free-for-all, everyone camp forever. People would often stay there for a long time, people who are working in Telluride and no one can afford to live there, so they'd camp at the lake, which I understand, but is not really a great resource situation. So we've since done a project to limit that to dispersed camping at designated sites. We installed a vault toilet, but now we have these old campsites to deal with. So you can see, I like this photo because you can see the no camping sign, and then you see what happened behind the sign. And this is at a really high elevation. It's about 11,000 feet. So bring us back to the native seed strategy. It is really hard to find seed to purchase that is appropriate for that high of a site. You can find a few graminoids, maybe. Forbes, I think I sent a list of like 25 species I was interested in to a regional ecologist, and she talked to all the seed people, and she's like, well, we've got 2 of those. So that's a challenge. And also at higher elevations, as you all know, the growing season is super short. So there's just not a lot of time in a year for those seeds to establish. So honestly, I'm not totally sure what we're going to do here. I think the current plan is to try to decompact the soil a little bit, maybe collect seed on site and just kind of scatter it in. It's not a huge area, so that makes it a little bit easier. Maybe put some wood straw down or some other mulch and just kind of see what comes back on its own. But I'm sure that we are not alone in these recreation impacts that weren't really an issue for us 20 years ago, and now we're suddenly trying to figure out the best practices for managing these sorts of impacts. All right, so the other example I want to share is another abandoned mine land project. We hadn't, since the standard mine back in the early 2000s, we hadn't had a whole lot of mine land work on the GMUG, but one of the benefits of all the buckets of money that Maggie was talking about is we are finding funds to do some of these super expensive, like this will be like $1 million to do the whole project. The super expensive work, that's important, but we just haven't been able to do until now. So this is northwest of Taylor Park Reservoir in the Gunnison Ranger District. They don't have a lot of history on this mine site, but they think it operated from about 1935 to 1942. The actual mill site is up the road here. There's a little bit of a tailings issue there, but the worst of it is where the tailings wash downstream. So you can see right there is all tailings, and then like the big kind of fan at the bottom. And this photo is from 1955, so this has been a problem for a long time. It's not anything new. But finally, 70 years later, we're maybe going to do something about it. And this project is underway for probably 2025, 2026. Here is a 2019 aerial image. You can see the road moved. The tailings look kind of the same. They're a little worse, but for 70 years, it's not too bad. This project is going to be a collaboration with Trout Unlimited, so we're super excited to work with them. And it's about an 8-acre area, so bigger than just a little campsite. We've got a few different veg types we're working with. So here is probably going to be a lodgepole pine forest. This is a wetland. It's actually a fed wetland complex that we're going to try to extend the edge of. And then downstream is a high elevation sagebrush shrublands. So what are we going to do? Probably a lot of things. We'll be planting lodgepole pine seedlings. That's maybe the most straightforward part. For the Forest Service, we're very good at planting trees. We've been doing it for a long time. We have an awesome silviculturist on the district who's been there for, I want to say 42 years. Like you'll go out with him and he'll see a tree that's like this big around and be like, yeah, I planted that one in 1980. So that part I'm not so worried about. We're also going to do some willow cuttings on site to try to extend the wetlands. Probably grow out some shrubs to plant, but I'm still kind of figuring that out. Grow out some wetland plugs, some sedges, maybe some graminoids. I think we're going to do seeding, but again, we run into the issue of, okay, I have all these forbs that we would love to grow here, but I can't just buy those. So do we try to collect some to grow out? Or do we do the last piece, which I'm calling seedbed prep, where you're really relying on the existing seed bank to recover? So this is a really bad photo, but I didn't get a better one. This is a test plot. It's down in that sagebrush, that lower washout area. Our partners at TU put in like 5 or 6 different test plots using different soil amendments to try to remediate the tailings. So part of the area will be fully removing the tailings. The other part, this area, they're going to just try to remediate them on site. So this had some combination of lime and a few other things. But I think it's really telling because all these little tiny lighter green things are sagebrush seedlings that are coming in. And those were not seeded there. We seeded a grass mix, which has come in pretty well as well, but the sagebrush is really popping, which to me is kind of promising. Like, okay, maybe we just get over the abiotic limitations here and let the seeds on site do what they're doing. So that's something that I'm interested to see how well it works. All right, just a couple slides to kind of tie things together. Restoration challenges, forbs, how do we get them? We want to have more. We're focused on, not just, we're not doing the Homestead Act anymore. I'm not trying to grow grass for my cows or seed cheatgrass or something else that we'll regret later. We're worried about pollinators. We want to kind of match the diversity of ecosystems and plants that we have now. But forbs are hard to source. They're hard to produce. This photo is from the Meeker Plant Center that Maggie mentioned earlier. It's a super cool place. It's run by 2 conservation districts. They're doing a lot of great work with common garden plots. They're trying to figure out what forbs are suited for a production environment. But it's not, grasses are a pretty easy crop where you grow them and you harvest the seed and you grow more seed. Forbs, as I've learned, are a lot more complicated. And the one piece of this that I think we can influence as managers is the demand part. Like it's a business, right? So if the producers know that they will have people who will pay a higher price for forb seeds because it costs more to grow them, and they know what species that people want, and there's some sort of consistent demand, then I think we're more likely to see these forbs available for purchase. And the other two pieces to me really come down to limitations for expertise and capacity within the Forest Service. So, you know, I got my master's in ecology. It was not in restoration ecology. I've learned a lot in the few years I've been on this job, but there's still a lot that I don't know. And we don't have at the forest level, at the regional level, maybe at the national level, we have like a restoration ecologist, but no, like that's no one's specific job. So we're all kind of doing this as like 10% of the rest of our entire jobs. And some people have a lot of experience, but there's no like one expert that I can call when I'm saying, hey, we want to like grow some shrubs for this wetland, but what do you think actually works? And yeah, the capacity is just kind of the same thing. We're all kind of doing this as 10% of our whole entire jobs. And finally, some potential solutions. So I want to give a shout out to the CONIPS and CHP crew that Maggie works with. They're awesome. These are all the forbs that they collected on the GMUG this summer. So I really think that is the first step to getting that more sustainable supply that we're wanting to have. I think a restoration community of practice would be really cool. I didn't know that CONIPS had a restoration committee until I saw Maggie's presentation. I saw her slides ahead of time, so I have a little bit of a warning. But, you know, like I've worked for the federal government for 8 years now, and I think we have these fake limitations on, you know, we'll talk to BLM, maybe National Park Service, though not always, like maybe Colorado State, and then we think we're being like really collaborative, but like we're missing like all of y'all, like all of the regional and local land managers who I think have a lot, in some cases, more expertise on these restoration projects than we do. And also volunteerism. You know, one gap is we're trying some new things. We don't know how well they work. It's hard for us to find time to monitor. So can we get some volunteers enlisted? Maybe some of the new CONIPS, Denison, and Telluride chapters want to have some little pet restoration sites to keep an eye on. Or the seed scouting is huge too, because we have a seasonal workforce. We can mobilize people to collect seeds, but it would be hard to find someone who can go, you know, check on the grasses every week or have that kind of phenological information that you really need to go out and collect seeds. Yeah, that's all I had. Thanks everyone. Feel free to shoot me an email. That's